Okay, guys. So just like Ms. Judy said, my name's Firefighter Tim Sinz. I've been a firefighter for I guess about 23 years. I started most of my career and spent most of my career at the Elkridge Firehouse on the eastern side of the county. Did about 17 years there, and then I switched over. There was a vacancy in the fire marshal's office, so I wanted to do something different. So I started working in the fire marshal's office. The fire marshal's office, for those that don't know, it's a bureau in the fire department that centers all around fire prevention. So it's basically two parts of the fire marshal's office. It's all about fire prevention. Half of that is fire investigations. Whenever there is a fire that does start, well, they got to figure out how it started. So they invest so it doesn't happen again. So there's the investigation side, and then the other side is the inspection side, to inspect the buildings and anything from homes and buildings to make sure everything's safe. So there's no fires that start. And then there's me, and I'm the oddball in the fire marshal's office, where I'm the one that gets out to communities and kind of preaches the word of fire prevention and addresses any concerns or questions people may have regarding anything, whether it's evacuation, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide, any type of non-emergency call pretty much that goes to our fire department. Most of them get filtered to me, and I handle each one as a kind of a one-on-one basis. So it's a little bit about myself. So for today, I was asked to come and do a little presentation for like evacuation and fire prevention. And I understand everyone has a different, some people live in 55 and over communities, some are single family, some are condos, apartments. So with that being said, evacuation, the main rules of evacuation for fire are all generally the same. But if anybody has any specific questions regarding their particular homes, because obviously all homes and buildings are built and created differently, please raise your hand. And then aside from that, I have a general set of premeditated guidelines I want to review with you guys, but I don't have, that's why the person that did the presentations and had my position before, they basically had about 2 PowerPoint presentations and basically said, okay, my presentations are about this or about that, and he sticks with the slides. And as I started getting to do more and more presentations, I kind of like to take it to wherever the crowd, customize it and take it to wherever the crowd wants to hone in on, because different people have different concerns. So I'm going to kick things off by talking about evacuation. So over the last several years, unfortunately, there's been nothing late breaking as far as what our main objective and rules are to evacuate if there's a fire. And it doesn't matter what kind of home you're in or what kind of building you're in, whether it's a commercial building, an apartment, or a single family home. The golden rule is obviously, hey, we still want to get outside where it's safe. And if we live in a group, not a group home, but a multi-family dwelling, whether it's an apartment complex or there's if we have a big family or whatever, then we live inside the same home. It's good to have what we call a generalized meeting spot, whether it's a common area, could be anywhere just outside the dwelling, underneath a flagpole, just a general spot just outside the building that everyone is aware of and is familiar with. And that just gives us a little bit of accountability. To have 100% accountability, I know most of you guys are independent living, whether it's 55 and over or whatever, but most of you guys are independent living. And no matter what kind of home you're in, whether it's a single family or multi-family dwelling, independent living is just that. It's everyone's entitled to their own privacy, their independence, And some people want to stick to that and want their own privacy, and they're entitled to it. And then some people want to look after other people, which is fantastic too. There's some folks that are concerned about maybe a next door neighbor is mobility impaired, and they have a mutual agreement and they have a good rapport with each other, that they look after each other if there is smoke or fire alarms going off, and they check on each other. So that's absolutely terrific. Some people don't want to be entitled to their own privacy, and every time they take a week vacation, they don't want to have to report that or tell anybody. Or if just they're simply going out for the day to go run errands or whatever, they don't want to have to report to anybody. So that's independent living. So if we're thinking about or trying to or striving to get no matter what kind of, whether it's a 55 and over apartment complex, and we're worried, we want to get everybody out safe, and we want to make sure everyone's safe, and we want to take attendance and be really meticulous. That's I love the idea, but it's not very reasonable because we're independent living and people are entitled to, to their own privacy. But I am a huge fan on is trying to have some sort of accountability. Those that want to look after each other and that have a rapport and that are really concerned, go to that meeting spot. And if you're concerned about a neighbor that may be mobility impaired or whatever, and you get to that meeting spot and you see that your neighbor is there with you at that meeting spot, well, that's some sort of accountability, and you know that they're outside and safe, as opposed to having no idea where anybody's at. There's sometimes the fire alarm where there's a smoke or fires going off, and some people don't have any of these types of meetings or any type of premeditated thoughts on what to do, and if it's late at night, they'll get in their car. If it's cold outside, they'll turn on the heat in their car. They just don't have any, and no one knows where anyone is. And it's nice to have some sort of accountability for those that are interested, and especially if one or two people are mobility impaired and they're interested in having someone look after them or whatever. It's always a great idea. Yes.
Sorry,
No.
So a neighbor on my floor is in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
We've been told when we evacuate, you go with a stairwell, and we're supposed to go there. Do we stay with them? Do we leave them? What do we do when we're evacuating? How soon does the fire department find them?
What floor are they on?
We're on the third floor.
You're on the third floor. So when the fire alarm goes off, elevators are typically they are out of service and we're not supposed to use them. Elevators are pre-programmed by default. Once the fire alarms go off, they go down no matter where their elevators are at, what floor they're on. They're programmed to go down to the first floor, and the doors open up, and then they don't work anymore. And the reason for that is if anybody happens to be in the elevator when the fire alarm goes off, well, they need to go down to the first floor anyway. So to answer your question, yes, that's very true what you said. Very, very good thought. So since we can't use elevators, we have to rely on the stairwells. And stairwells, one of the first things they taught us firefighters in fire school 20 some years ago when I was in it, one of the first things they taught us was the construction of buildings. When fire rated stairwells are built in these buildings, they're built with fire resistant material, and it's a very strict fire code these stairwells have to pass. So there's a reason, long story short, that's the reason why a lot of stairwells you go to in buildings, sometimes you walk into a nice pretty building and it's new, shiny, and then you go into the stairwell and it's like a dungeon. Well, there's a reason for that. So sometimes there's no carpet, sometimes there's no pretty pictures, nothing will burn, everything is incombustible in the stairwell. It's even said that these stairwells are built practically independent of the entire building's structure. So it's possible for the building to start collapsing, and the stairwells could be freestanding. So these stairwells, they're built with block firewalls, obviously. All the doors and the hardware for the doors, they're all fire resistant and fire rated doors. So when you're in a stairwell, you're safe, right? It's a place of safety. So they teach us firefighters that, because if we're ever run out of air or our mask or air tank malfunctions, we head for the stairwell. And then obviously when you guys go to the stairwell, we want to go down to the first floor and evacuate. But for mobility impaired, we tell them that focus on the stairwell, because that's a place of safety, and depending on the size of the building and the landing in the stairwell, there's always enough space for at least one wheelchair to kind of duck in without impeding on people's egress or exiting down. If there's like 2 or 3 mobility impaired residents, then it's typically, depending on the size of the landing in the stairwell, typically it's too much and it would start blocking people's egress points. So that being said, if the fire alarm's going off and there's not much smoke or fire, it could be on a different floor, it could be far away, it could be a malfunction, who knows. If the conditions aren't visibly bad and it's not, there's no strong smoke and you're not coughing or you don't even smell anything at all, go to the stairwell, but be on the wrong side of the stairwell, if that means. So if the stairwell door is here and I open it and I go into the stairwell, well then I have a nice landing. But if I, but I don't want to impede people, so if I'm just park my wheelchair right here and know that, hey, I'm good right now, but if I start smelling smoke or something, I got my place of safety that's right here, so I'm good to go. You know what I mean? And then if we have accountability or whatever, and someone's evacuates, goes down, we always encourage those people, if they're looking out after a loved one or a neighbor or what have you, tell a firefighter saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is on the 4th floor, they're handicapped, and I don't see them at the meeting spot. I'm not sure, I'm concerned they might not have gotten out. So, and we'll immediately go and help them if they're, what else? And we have a special key in the fire engine where we take control of the elevator, and we can use that to help us evacuate if conditions are feasible for that. And then of course we can use the elevator, the firefighters can use the elevator for hauling equipment up and down steps and hoses and so forth.
Are those keys unique to a building, or are they the key that you use for elevators?
They are, yes, they're not completely universal. Some of them are, but they're not completely. Some elevator keys to the elevator work in other keys, but they're not completely independent of each other, if that makes sense. Now when we use the elevator, like I said, it defaults down to the 1st floor and opens up, but we're not supposed to use it during when the fire alarm is going off. And it typically won't let you, it kind of shuts off until the fire department comes with that key. And then oftentimes it's not just the fire department that has the key, it's the building management company has that key to give us as well. Yes?
Last question.
Sure.
I'll see the rest of it because Jerry's recording it.
Okay.
I have a keypad I just installed on my door.
Okay.
Can I give the fire department the code to get in if for some reason I'm stuck in there, I'm disabled or something? Get the door down?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, is this the door to get into your actual unit, or is this the door to get inside the common area of your building?
No, my condo.
Okay,
I'm on the 3rd floor and I have a keypad, a code to go in.
Okay.
To get in. Can I give that to the department in order to get into my unit in case I'm in there and I can't get out for some reason?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do I do that?
So it's 2 ways of doing it. There is, every time someone calls 911, if you need help, you can just give it to the 911 operator right then and there, and all the information that the resident, the 911 caller gives the dispatcher, it immediately gets told to us. So when I'm driving the fire engine, they repeat that, and if you tell them, if someone says, oh, there's a big scary dog on the scene and he bites, well then we're gonna okay, well we gotta think twice on how we're gonna get inside this house or something like that. Or if someone tells us, hey, the code to get into this house is such and such, we always take that information. So that's one way of doing it. And then another way of doing it is calling our non-emergency dispatcher, 911 dispatch number, and they can take the address, and when someone calls 911, it immediately pops up on their computer, the location and any type of notes that that may be necessary for them to use. Like typically, it's the police use that often if it's a frequent, if a person has a history of violence or guns in the house or whatever, those things pop up on their computer screen right away. And the same thing can be done with residents that want special notes in the system for them if there's a code or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm, my pleasure. Any other questions regarding evacuation or anything like that?
Why don't you, I'm suggesting do
Sure.
what you planned, and like I've got a couple, but I'd rather not get sidetracked. I'm like to hear what you have to say overall.
Sure. So we spoke about elevators, how they're a place of safety, and we need to elevators, how we're not supposed to use the elevators, and go to the stairwells, which are a place of safety. For mobility impaired folks, we just established we should focus on the stairwell and either be in the landing or just outside the stairwell for that. And again, this is independent living. Now, there's a lot of folks that get things a little confused. Whenever there's a building being built, it's the very first thing that's established is the occupancy type, whether it's a single family or independent living, or if it is a group living or a nursing home or so forth. That's the very first thing that's established is what we call the occupancy type. And well, if it's if the occupancy type is a nursing home or assisted living type, a group home, well, the construction of the building is completely different. It's completely different. So you just couldn't take an apartment and say, hey, we're gonna make this into a nursing home or something like that. So the way like a nursing home or assisted living occupancy is built is they have a lot more firewalls, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of mobility impaired folks in assisted living and nursing homes, so they all can't just get up and walk out or walk down steps. So therefore, the caretakers, they all have predetermined guidelines on, depending on the construction of the building, on where to go. And we use a term called shelter in place, where we where everyone has to go on a certain side of the building, and the other side of where the fire rated doors and fire rated walls are. It's all, the buildings are built into kind of sections divided up. There's a fire on one section, well, everyone has to shelter in place at another area. So that's independent living. Now one thing I wanted to mention, a lot of things that are really a lot of people don't know about, or they think the fire is just so dangerous and that's what really makes people sick and is really harmful to us, but it's really not the case. It's that smoke that's super duper dangerous and that makes us sick. That being said, that's like a huge advantage. We can use that to our advantage, because the smoke's dangerous to us, that's what's most harmful to us, and it's easy to stay away. The smoke's not gonna burn down things and burn down our doors, so all we have to do is get away from the smoke. So I always tell folks, if for whatever reason the conditions are so bad where you can't evacuate, you open up the door to your bedroom or to your unit, there's just smoke all over the place, then I don't want you to go through the smoke and, put yourself in danger, because the smoke is what is harmful. So we just want to close the door immediately, go into a bedroom or any room that has a window, and close the door behind you, and then put a blanket, just to be extra safe, put a blanket underneath the door, and then wait in front of the window for the firefighters, and they'll get you out easily through the window. And there's, of course, fires are dangerous, fires are hot, they can get more and more hot and spread, but it takes a while for that. But if there's a small fire anywhere in this building, if someone's just burning toast or something very mild somewhere in this building, we'll smell it right away. And that smoke travels immediately. If there's a fire anywhere, it's that smoke that's harmful to us. So what I'm trying to say is all these interior doors, whether it's that door or any plastic or wood door that's in our homes right now, bathroom door, bedroom door, even though they're not fire rated doors and they're cheap plastic and wood, it's an understatement to say they can save lives big time. One of the most amazing things I quickly learned when I was a rookie firefighter 20 years ago, after all these fires, after the first few fires that I put out, we put out the fire, and then we always go through and make sure there's no more fire in the walls, assess for damage. And we go into these buildings, and they're all just charred black, as you can imagine. We just hosed everything down and put the fire out, but now there's just black charred ceiling, drywall, walls, everything's just terrible. And then as you're walking through the building or the home, then I go and open up a bedroom door or a bathroom door, and that was closed. And it's just amazing. Like I see all this terrible ruined home, and then I open up a bedroom door, and it looks like nothing ever happened. It looks like not even a little bit of black soot or whatever on the fire side of the door that's all black, but I've never seen a bedroom door burn down, because fires we'll talk about how fires start in a little bit, but yeah, it's just so amazing. So that smoke is what causes all the damage to these houses and what makes us sick. It's not necessarily the fire. So we have to use that important tool to, if we can't get outside where it's safe, hey, it's absolutely fine to go into a room and close the door, put a blanket underneath the door, and just wait in front of the window for firefighters. And it's good, and it's bonus if you have a cell phone, then you can call it just to reassure that, call 911 and let them know that you're going to evacuate and that you're at the window. But if you don't have a phone on you, no worries at all. It's one firefighter's job that's on the fire engine. We all just have a bunch of guidelines that we follow, each individual firefighter. And one of those firefighters, their job is to, once they get to the scene of a call, they don't grab any tools. They immediately get out of the fire engine and they walk a circle around the building, looking in all the windows to make sure we know where the fire is and who needs to be rescued, if anyone at all needs to be rescued. So, yes.
Is any point in investing in one of those ladders that you can put on the window?
Yeah, it's a common question that I get, those rescue ladders. Some people, even the professionals, even firefighters, I feel like half of them love the idea, half of them are opposed to it. I'm kind of right in the middle. I'm more or less, so from the fire department, our stance is, no, you don't need it, because in this area in Howard County where we are, the fire department or anyone where in this area, you just don't need it, because the fire department will be like here or most places within 5 or 10 minutes. Now, if someone lived out west somewhere, or just somewhere where the closest firehouse was 30 or 40 minutes away, then we would adjust the way we kind of do business and what our recommendations are. But for anyone that lives like in this like in a neighborhood type setting, it's not necessarily needed. But I always tell folks, hey, if it gives you peace of mind, because some people just they're just conservative and they want to err on the side of safety, so they want to feel like they're barricading themselves in a room when it's fire. I get it, the idea of, oh my gosh, the house is on fire and now I'm trapping myself in this room, you know, and you're relying on the fire department to get there with no problems. So I get that, and if it gives someone peace of mind to have that ladder underneath the bed, you know, I say it's not a bad idea for peace of mind. And well, do I think anyone should use it? No, I don't think anyone would have a need for it. And then, but I've ran into quite a few people that just, you know, want to have a solid plan in place. And, you know, if they shelter in place because they can't get outside where it's safe, they can't get outside the front door or back door or any because there's just too much smoke outside, they shut the door. And I said, if conditions if you start to get worried and antsy, you can even take that ladder out from underneath the bed or whatever and open up your window and set it up. You're still not going to need it and don't use it, but if it makes you feel comfortable saying, okay, if for some crazy reason it gets crazy smoky in here, well, now everything's ready to go. Now all you have to do is, you know, use the ladder. It's all deployed and ready to go. So just for that extra peace of mind.
But we're all seniors, remember that.
I wish, you know, and these are seniors
Who want to climb
that are trying to convince me otherwise. Usually it's the opposite. Usually, I had one person that didn't like the rope idea, and she wanted to make a belaying system with a single rope to slide down, and she was dead set on it. She was very, very set on it, and I had to do what I could to kind of talk her out. The fire, it would be twice as dangerous to do that than it would be to. So
is it safer when you have smoke? Does smoke rise or does it drop? And what about carbon monoxide? What is the safest place to be in?
So smoke always goes in one direction first, and that's up. That's why we always have our smoke detectors. They have to be on the ceiling.
Right.
Because they detect smoke. Now, smoke and carbon monoxide are two different gases. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas that's produced by a fancy word called incomplete combustion, and this is this comes from fossil fuels. So appliances, whether it's a washer, a dryer, a fireplace in the house, hot water heater, or a furnace. When gas appliances in the house, it could be natural gas, propane, whatever type of fossil fuel, when these gas appliances stop working efficiently, and 99.999% of the time, they all work perfectly efficient, but it has to be a perfect blend for the gas-fed appliance to be working properly and to give off heat, for example, whether it's a fireplace or an oven, has to have that perfect blend of oxygen and gas. And if something's a little bit off, too much oxygen or not enough oxygen in that blend, that's when it gives off this off gas called carbon monoxide, and that's harmful to us. And it could be due to, like, I used to think that carbon monoxide is mainly from like old furnaces or super old appliances, and that's somewhat true, but it can happen to newer stuff too. If the builders didn't seal the gas pipes properly and something's leaking out a little bit, and it's just not that perfect blend of air and oxygen to gas to make the heat. And oftentimes in older homes, it's just like a few mouse or rodent turds that get into the pipes, and it occludes and blocks a little bit of pipes. So it could be any reason, but the bottom line is it's a colorless, odorless gas. So there could be carbon monoxide in here right now, and we would never know it. If it's high levels of it, after being in here for quite a while, we might start feeling a little sick, and then if it gets worse, we might eventually get like flu-like symptoms, and to the point where the flu-like symptoms get worse and worse and worse, to the point where that we're no longer even mobile. Carbon monoxide is it's measured in parts per million. So for example, like 10 or 20 parts per million of carbon monoxide, if that was in here right now and we're all just kind of talking, we could be exposed to that for a couple hours or a few hours, and it wouldn't affect us at all. We'd be absolutely fine. But it still indicates, and we would have no idea. The only way we know it is if there's a monitor, a carbon monoxide or CO monitor around. If it's anything above 0, something's not right and it needs to be corrected or fixed. But my point is that if those low levels of 10 parts per million creep up to 30 or 40 parts per million, it's still not terrible, and we may or may not even notice being exposed to it for an hour or two. We may not even notice a difference because it's time related too. But now all of a sudden, if it starts creeping up to close to 100 parts per million and we're exposed to it for a few hours, or if it's 100 parts per million and it's in our bedroom, and then we go to bed for 8 hours and sleep, that's when it becomes dangerous. So it's not just the amount of parts per million, but it's the time we're exposed to it as well. To answer your question, the weight of carbon monoxide, if it was lighter than air, like a gas like helium that's lighter than air, then it would clearly float. And if it was heavier than air, then it would sink. But carbon monoxide, believe it or not, it's depending on the purity of it, it's all about the same weight as air, so it kind of hovers and floats. With that being said, we can have carbon monoxide alarms either on the ceiling or low on the wall, and it's absolutely fine. So it doesn't make a difference. Now, starting a few years ago, they started making it more economical for folks, and all the stores offer a variety of smoke alarms. If you buy and replace a smoke alarm and you want a carbon monoxide alarm too, you can buy a smoke alarm, and it looks exactly like a normal smoke alarm, but it has a carbon monoxide sensor inside of it, so it detects carbon monoxide as well.
Does the alarm sound the same for carbon monoxide and smoke?
So the carbon monoxide alarms, if it's a combination unit, like this is a smoke alarm, but if it was a carbon monoxide alarm, it would look exactly the same. And when it goes off, the carbon monoxide alarms are programmed to not only beep, but after they beep, they talk to you. So it'll go, if there's smoke in a house, this will go beep, beep, beep real loud, and then it'll say danger, fire, evacuate. If it's the CO or carbon monoxide sensor, it'll go beep, 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 danger, carbon monoxide, evacuate. So it tells you. And then,
Is that a combination one?
no, you can't tell by looking at it, but it's not. You gotta read the very small fine print on the back or the package but no, this is just smoke alarms. And prior to the combination units becoming so popular, they have the other previous popular type of carbon monoxide alarm are rectangular in shape, and you just simply plug them into a wall outlet and leave them there. So it's about the size of my hand, and if there's a wall outlet right here, you just plug it in and leave it there, and it works off the electricity of your house. And sometimes they have a battery backup. But those are perfectly fine too. If someone doesn't want to climb on a ladder and stuff like that and mess around with the smoke alarm carbon monoxide, they can just plug one into a wall, and that's absolutely fine too. Because it's time, because carbon monoxide is not only it not only doesn't matter about how high the parts per million is, but also the exposure time that you're exposed to it. That's why it's good to have one either inside or just outside the sleeping area. And then additionally, it's nice to have one inside like a common area of the house as well. Whether it's near your gas-fed appliances or just in your family room or wherever. That's just the general recommendations. There's nothing in the fire code that says, right now, there's nothing in the fire code that says all residents and homeowners need to have carbon monoxide alarms. There is something that says, there are fire smoke alarm requirements, of course, in the fire code, but nothing for carbon monoxide, unless just a few years ago, they just passed a law in the fire code that says all rental properties now have to have carbon monoxide alarms if they have gas-fed appliances. So you only have to have a carbon monoxide alarm if you have gas-fed appliances or an attached garage. And the attached garage, the reason for that is exhaust from vehicles. Sometimes there's been 1 or 2 carbon monoxide 911 calls that I got, and we searched the whole house. We couldn't find anything on our meters. And then as we're leaving, we open up the garage door, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot. I had my car started. I was gonna go to the store, and I forgot." And the exhaust fumes were making the carbon monoxide alarm go off. So attached garages or any gas-fed appliances, yes.
How do you respond to either alarm? Like with carbon monoxide, you leave immediately, and with smoke, you can spend some more time getting out or locking yourself in?
So the general recommendation, it's kind of funny because in all honesty, it's a little bit of a gray area. Obviously, smoke or fire, number one priority, get outside where it's safe. Carbon monoxide, still same thing. Carbon monoxide's going off, get outside where it's safe. There's some people that, which isn't a terrible way of thinking, but it's not something we love to see. They, carbon monoxide in the house, that's weird. I'm gonna open up the windows and air the house out. And then sometimes, their carbon monoxide detector or whatever, it stopped going off, it's good. And yeah, but if it went off and there's a problem, and then you close the window and say, "Yep, problem's fixed," and then you go to bed, the problem may not be fixed. So there's a lot of people that either do that or they open up the windows to air out the house and then they evacuate. But that makes our job harder because then we get there and there's nothing on our meters. The air's been kind of disturbed with wind or fans, and now we shut the windows trying to replicate how the conditions when the problem occurred. So yes, immediately evacuate, call 911, and don't open the windows, even though it makes sense. Don't open the windows so we can get there and figure out where the problem is. And they all have I'd say maybe close to 50% of the carbon monoxide alarms, they go off and start acting wonky because they're just reaching the end of their life. Prior to a few years ago, I feel like carbon monoxide alarms only lasted like 7 or 8 years. Now they're up to the same lifespan as a smoke alarm, which is 10 years. So all smoke alarms need to be replaced every 10 years. All models, all makes and models, doesn't matter what kind it is. All smoke alarms are supposed to be replaced 10 years from the date they're installed. If you don't know that, and that's from the date that they're installed, and that's the whole reason why most smoke alarms have a sticker on it somewhere where you write down the date where it's installed. If you don't write the date, which a lot of people don't write the date down, then we just revert to the fine print on the manufacturer's date. So the manufacturer's date, this might be manufactured in say 2000, but then I didn't install it until 2002. So if I installed in 2002, I'd write 2002 right here, and then I don't have to replace it until 10 years, 2012. But if I didn't write that down, then I'd have to replace it 2 years earlier. For those that live in group homes, or not group homes, but multifamily homes, and some people we have a concept that it's all 100% like self-awareness. If they were interested in having like hall captains, for example, maybe someone lives in like a mid-rise that's 5 or 6 stories high. If the smoke alarm goes off, or if a fire alarm goes off, they can evacuate. And sometimes if it's a big building, an apartment building or what have you, people assigned that are familiar with the evacuation procedure just kind of stand out in the hallway to direct people. Hey, oftentimes big buildings have a stairwell and a evacuation stairwell this side and that side, and they just kind of keep everybody moving. Okay, just stand in the middle. All right, everybody go out that way. Just make sure there's no questions or concerns. People forget things a lot. Oh, you're in a wheelchair. Okay, just go to the stairwell and hang out outside the stairwell. And if conditions go bad, we'll make sure that you're squared away and that sort of thing. Honestly, the most important, if someone chooses, or a group, community chooses to have these hall captains, in my opinion, the biggest reason why they're advantageous is because I find from the little bit experience that I've had and questions and concerns over the years, whenever there's smoke or fire in a multifamily dwelling, whether it's 55 plus center, 55 and plus high-rise building or whatever, I feel like most of the problems or concerns are with some of these older residents. Most of the time you don't smell smoke or fire right away, and so as soon as they step out into the hallway, they might smell a little bit of smoke, they might not, but I feel like they're like kind of playing Columbo and they're trying to investigate where the fire is. They're just like, I bet you that's Mrs. Smith on the 4th floor burning her toast again, or whatever. And you'd be surprised that some people, instead of evacuating, they're going up to the 4th floor to just to be nosy and to figure it all out. So it's a big advantage of the hall captain. Hey, just go downstairs, keep on going down, keep walking, stop, don't want to chatter and call your friend and say, yeah, guess what's happening right now. Do that when you get outside. Yes?
And back to the smoke detectors, some of them have a test button.
Yes.
How often do you recommend it?
Well, it's recommended that, like on paper, it's always recommended that you do that. You test the smoke alarm once a month. So it's great. It's great if you can remember to test them once a month. So all smoke alarms, doesn't matter what kind it is, hardwired, battery operated, all smoke alarms have a big old test button in plain sight. So when it's hanging on the ceiling, you can always see the test button really loud and really easily. If you can't reach it, instead of getting a chair or a ladder, its little handy trick is to grab a broomstick and press it with the broomstick. But the only thing you have to remember when you see the test button and test it, just don't press it. You have to press it and hold it for 3 to 5 seconds. And then if it beeps, or it might just beep once, or it might give a long series of beeps, but if it makes any noise at all and beeps, that means it's working good. If it doesn't beep at all, that means it's not working, and we gotta consider changing the batteries, and if that doesn't work, we should change the whole smoke alarm itself. So this one I'll press, it beeped, but this one's a fancy one, and I let go, and it'll give a series of beeps too. So I'm gonna cover it so we don't, but in all smoke alarms, they all have the same sequence, believe it or not. All smoke alarms, doesn't matter what kind you buy, they have to beep 3 times and then pause, and then beep 3 times and pause. So no matter what kind of smoke alarm you buy, it's got to do 3 loud beeps at a certain decibels and then pause, and then it'll keep on going until the smoke alarm till smoke clears. And then all smoke alarms also have a hush button on them somewhere. A hush button is if when smoke alarms go off, oftentimes it could be because it's too close to the kitchen and we're cooking and we're burning food or something like that, and there is a little bit of smoke, no fire, we're not really concerned, but the smoke alarm's going off and being really annoying. We just press the hush button, and again, we press it and hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, and then it'll automatically hush and be quiet for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, it automatically resets and automatically starts working normal again.
Excuse me, does the alarm have to be on a ceiling? Can it be high on a wall?
It can be high on the wall. It's recommended, like our first go-to is try to get them on the ceiling, but if that's not an option, like some houses, we can do it high on the wall. It works fine too. Yes.
Why do you have to place them on top of stairways? I mean, that's a perfect place to fall all the way down and break your neck.
Yeah, but it's my favorite place to have smoke alarms. When builders, a lot of time when
It's by code, it's a code, so you're required to put it there.
yeah, well, the code, to my knowledge, a code can be interpreted. The main thing the code states is having a smoke alarm on each level of the house, but it's twice as smoke alarms work twice as efficient to be at the stairwell. When there's smoke or fire, if this room's not a good example, because so when there's smoke or fire in a room, the fire gets hotter and hotter, and the smoke starts getting more and more, goes straight up to the ceiling, and it goes straight up to the ceiling, and depending on which way the draft is or what have you, its smoke is just banking up, trying to go higher, but it can't go any higher because the ceiling's there. And then it starts moving. It's moving to the next closest place where it's trying to get high. And so, for example, if this is just a room, and then this is another room, this is another room to the house, that smoke's gonna finally bank down, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I'll go in here. And then the smoke all kind of shoots up here. So that's why the stairwells are almost like a magnet for smoke and fire. It basically attracts it. After smoke is banking up the ceiling, it's looking for the next highest place. And obviously it's the ceiling's what's the limiting factor, where it can't go up any higher until it finds that stairwell. So we take that knowledge, and we have the smoke alarm right there, and the stairwell's right there, so the smoke's going right this way, and as it passes, we'll have it here. Now, you don't have to have it in this stairwell, like there's some that make it challenging and have it so you can't reach it. It can be like the stairwell could be here, and you could have the smoke alarm right here. That's perfectly fine. And same thing at the top. You don't have to have it in the stairwell. So that's something to consider as well. So most fires, as you can imagine, many rooms in the home, bedrooms, bathrooms, family rooms, basements, whatever. In residential homes, well more than 90% of fires start in the kitchen. Almost every single fire that I put out in a single family residential home always starts in the kitchen. The reason, and there's a lot of dangerous stuff going on in the kitchen. Stoves, ovens, microwaves, coffee makers, and toasters. All that stuff is really dangerous. But the number one cause for all these fires that start in the kitchen aren't because of that. They're actually because due to the number one cause is unattended cooking. Unattended cooking. So that means examples of unattended cooking is when someone's cooking on the stove, and then maybe they have to check on their son or their grandson outside playing, or the doorbell might ring and they have to answer the door, phone call, and they have to leave the kitchen for a second, because obviously we know there's food cooking at the time, and we're gonna come back and tend to it in just 1 minute. I just have to go and say something to the kid or grandkid, or do something for a second. But then we get outside, and the grandkid fell off the scooter, and now we're like, oh, and we're focused on that, and we forget that there's food on the stove cooking. That food then burns and catches on fire, and that's how most fires start. I've been to some fires where it's been like started similarly, but then it's to the point where they tend to other business and they get sidetracked, and then they get even more sidetracked and they pick up their keys and then they go to the grocery store. So for that reason, we have a rule that we follow. If anyone's ever cooking in the kitchen, they need to stay in the kitchen. And if you have to leave the kitchen for even just a moment Because obviously if you leave for just a few seconds or a moment, it's not a huge deal. But the huge deal is if you leave with the intention to leave for just a moment or a few seconds, but then you get sidetracked then that's when it's becomes dangerous. So we recommend set a timer. If you have to leave the kitchen for whatever reason, set a timer for 1 or 2 minutes, and it'll remind you that, hey, oh gosh, I have food on the stove cooking. Or put a towel, a cooking towel, or a spoon in your pocket, or something that might remind you that there's food on the stove cooking. So all of this, well more than 90% of residential fires start that way due to unattended cooking. It's always a good idea to have a lid or cookie sheet handy in case when a fire starts, whether it's a grease fire on the stove top, to slide a cookie sheet over top of the pot that's on fire, or a lid that fits on it properly, and that starves the fire from oxygen. It smothers the fire and puts the fire out that way. So from the fire department, from all the fire department's stance, whenever there's a kitchen fire, our number one go-to is always, if it's on the stovetop, shut off the burner, of course, and then slide a lid or a cookie sheet over top the pot. And then the third step is the one that no one ever does, but it's the easiest, and that's do nothing. And the reason why I made that into a third step is because a lot of statistics and studies have came out and from different burn centers across the U.S. and there's been some common themes from burn victims and common stories of how they got their burns. Posterior side, elderly cooking, and the common story is they did everything right. They were cooking, then they were surprised and we panicked a little bit because the food started catching on fire, the grease. So they shut off the burner just like they did, slid a lid or a cookie sheet over the top of it. And their adrenaline's pumping a little bit, and they're like the house is filled with smoke, and now they smell like burnt grease and yucky smells, and they feel like they need to do something. They're just like, so they're like, okay, well let me take this and dump it in the sink, and then if you just move that pot a little bit, well, oxygen's you lift it up, and that might introduce a little bit of oxygen. That fire's gonna whip back up and come up and could burn you in the face or what have you. So let it cool on its own. You're smothering the fire. Fire is contained in the pot with the lid, and do nothing. Let it sit and cool down naturally on its own. Even though your house stinks, you can open up a window and just try not to disturb anything. Yeah.
How about those blankets that are now being pushed on you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're I like the concept. I feel like it's between those blankets and those rescue ladders. I get that question a lot, and I think that's a great concept. And like my daughter was shadowing I took my daughter to a school to tour for high school, and we're at they don't call it home ec anymore, whatever they call the cooking class. But they have, I noticed, I really like the idea, instead of like fire extinguishers everywhere and so forth, they do have fire extinguishers, but they have these things on the wall, mounted on the wall, where they're the fire blankets. And I really like that idea. I think it's just a lot of old school firefighters that I talk to that are friends of mine that still work in the department. They're just like, oh, that's, just because it's new, they're afraid to explore it. But I like the concept. The concept it first was established and got started more than 10 or 15 years ago, when it was advertised and they promoted it for elderly cooking, because if you catch on fire, someone's cooking and they wear loose sleeves or what have you, and they catch themselves on fire, well, adults can't stop, drop, and roll like elderly can't stop, drop, and roll like they used to, like kids and young adults. So what do they do? Well, that's how they were marketed, is to have a fireproof blanket hanging up or somewhere close by the stove or the oven that they're supposed to wrap themselves in to smother the fire. And then all of a sudden, finally, I think it's a great concept personally, is now they start saying, why don't we use this for everything? I know personally, there's probably been 3 or 4 times, and I think all 3 or 4 times was at the firehouse where I'm cooking dinner for the guys, and because there's just so much grease in the fire outside, and on the grill outside, there's so much grease, I open it up and there's flames everywhere or whatever. It happens, like, fantastic. I wish I would have had the blanket to just put it on there and no harm, no damage, as opposed to having a fire extinguisher. A lot of people don't realize fire extinguishers are, it takes a little bit of training to use it. It's not rocket science, but when there is a fire, when you least expect it, now you're like, the first challenge is, where is it? Like, where did this fire extinguisher? I think I put it somewhere 10 years ago, but you're looking for it, and the time you find it and you come back and you figure out how to use it, well, now the fire's probably almost doubled in size. And then, of course, the fire extinguisher is only that big, and now it's doubled in size and it doesn't have enough extinguishing agent in there to put out the fire. So fire extinguishers are good. Again, tool in the toolbox. Have it there if it makes you feel comfortable. We used to, prior to 15 years ago, the fire department used to teach fire extinguisher classes on how to use fire extinguishers. We discontinued that a long time ago because the chiefs realized, like, well, we're starting to, there's a conflicted message we're sending. We're contradicting ourselves because we're trying to teach residents, and we really genuinely want residents to get outside and be safe. And if there's smoke or fire in a home or building, get low and go outside where it's safe, go to that meeting spot. And then all of a sudden we're teaching, okay, this is how you use a fire extinguisher, grab the fire extinguisher. We don't want people to start having to put their lives at risk or put in harm's way. So that's why we don't spread that message of fire extinguishers and teach fire extinguisher training anymore. The big consideration for myself, a couple of things about fire extinguishers. If there's a grease fire, for example, on the stovetop, I grab a fire extinguisher, I come back in a reasonable amount of time, pull the pin, and I spray it. Well, it's a lot of pressure and a extinguishing powder called dry chem type powder, something that looks similar to baby powder, I guess. And it's under a lot of air pressure in that extinguisher. And we aim it at the grease fire, and then we spray it, and all that high air pressure and the extinguishing agent is going on this grease fire, which is great, but it's so much pressure, it can actually push that grease and make it splatter onto the curtains, and now the fire could spread into the curtains and stuff like that. So fire extinguishers are great, but everything has a purpose. Personally, I like the blankets, and I think we should be promoting them personally. And I think more than half the fire department is like that. But we have some old school chiefs and higher ups where they're not ready to say, they're not ready to give us the green light to start saying they're great. And plus, simple is better. Like, instead of trying to learn how to use a fire extinguisher, well, it's a blanket. It's a fire retardant blanket. Obviously, we're trying to smother the fire, and you just drape it over top. It doesn't take any formal type of training to do. I think. And does anybody have any questions regarding fires or evacuation or anything? Yes.
Where would you buy a blanket?
You can buy them anywhere. Obviously, you can buy anything on Amazon or online, but you can also buy them at like Lowe's and Home Depot. Yep.
30 seconds on pets. I don't know if anybody has, I don't have a pet, but when there is a fire, I'm thinking of a neighbor who would rather her pet be saved than her. So, What would you say about that?
So 2 times in my career, 2 different incidents had similar circumstances. One was a cat and one was a dog. Me and the guys got into a single family home. They're both single family homes. Got in, we put out the fire. It was a pretty big fire. 1 or 2 rooms were off in the fire, and we put out the fire. We come back outside after the fire's out. Right after the fire's out, we come outside, and the homeowner came up to me on 2 different occasions and said, was worried. He's like, I got outside safe and got the family outside. I totally forgot about my dog or my cat. So I, told the guys, and we went back inside to look for it. And on both circumstances were similar, and the end result was extremely similar too. So when any animal, they all have natural instincts to keep themselves safe. So if there is a fire in here right now, and we all evacuate, and we leave the dog or the cat, and it starts filling up with hot, yucky, smoky air, and that cat or the dog isn't going to be, oh, this is terrible. This smoke is just terrible. And they're not just gonna stay in here and breathe in that yucky smoke. They're gonna go right out that door and go as far away from that smoke and yuckiness as they can. And long story short, where we found the dog and the cat on those 2 different occasions were upstairs at the bedroom, far away from where the fire was in the kitchen, buried underneath clothes in the closet. And they were alive and well and all that good stuff. So they can keep themselves and they can keep themselves safe. It's more of a concern for those caged animals, or if for whatever reason they might be confined to a room with the door shut, then they clearly can't self-rescue and get out. So for that reason, I like to tell people my recommendations are, if your dog or your cat is within 30 seconds of, if it takes a few seconds, most if it's a dog or cat that's middle-aged or older, usually they're just like happy-go-lucky or whatever. You just call them over and they're easy. You pick them up and you go outside. And if it takes only 10 extra seconds to do that, I say do that personally. But if the cat or the dog's 1 or 2 years old and they're young and they're just hyper and they don't listen, I don't want anybody to waste more than 30 seconds to try to wrestle the dog and put a leash on them and all that stuff. So if it's something that can take 10 seconds, quick seconds to scoop up the dog or the pet, great. If not, and you would come in those circumstances if they're running all over the house. And if they're running all over the house, well, then they can keep themselves safe anyway, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, so crated animals we have to watch out for because they can't self-rescue and stuff like that. So the only other thing I wanted to mention to you guys, I know we talked a whole lot about fire evacuation and fire prevention, which is great, but the odds of having events and circumstances happen are slim, but hopefully we have a little bit of an idea on what to do if they do occur. Something that's more, the odds are a lot more prevalent or it can really happen is any of us having a medical emergency. So typically, the fire department, 80% of all of our 911 calls are medical calls. So all firehouses, a lot of people don't know, all firehouses have at least 1 fire engine and 1 ambulance. And 6 firefighters at all the firehouses, at least, at a minimum. 4 on the fire engine, 2 on the ambulance. And we all have the same certification and training. If I'm on an ambulance with my buddy today, next day that I go to work, I'm gonna switch over and be on the fire engine. So we all have the same education and certifications. So 80% of the 911 calls are medical, whether it's a sickness, medical or trauma related, injured patient. Someone may have fell down the steps, it could be anything, especially when we get older, we just get, it happens. So that being said, just a couple big tips that are near and dear to me, because I spent almost 20 years responding to all these types of emergencies. What I'd love to see is, the first task for me, I'm at the firehouse, the alarms go off, someone's fell down or they're hurt or they're sick, and they dispatch our ambulance. I'm walking fast to the ambulance, and they're going to tell me two important things. They're going to tell me why or how they're sick or what's wrong with them, and they're going to be telling me the address and the location. Two important things. So I'm walking fast and quiet, trying to listen to the dispatcher, and I get into the ambulance, start it up, and hopefully the address that I heard, we're all really, really, really familiar with the area that we're in charge of, but we have maps just in case. So I know where it's at, I drive to it, turn to the street that it's on, and now a lot of firefighters like myself are kind of old school. We have the evens on one side of the road, odds on the other. So now I'm counting down the houses. Okay, it's this. Okay, so we should be going to that house over there. But we're all just human beings. So have those house numbers visible. When someone calls 911, sometimes I'd like to see, sometimes we always call it 911 jumping jacks, because sometimes the 911 caller or someone is going like that. Hey, I love it, because then I turn onto the street and I know exactly where I'm going, and I don't have to creep and go a little bit slower reading house numbers. So having those house numbers visible is fantastic, whether it's a fire emergency or a medical related call. It's always nice to have a cell phone handy. Obviously, in this day and age, we all typically do. The other thing, when I get to a medical emergency, one thing that I love to see, a lot of times, if it's a elderly husband and wife, and the husband calls 911 for the wife who fell getting out of bed or whatever type of medical emergency, we get there, and sometimes the husband can't really, everyone's a little bit rattled and frazzled, and they can't think clearly because they got 4 big burly firefighters with bags saying, what's wrong? And she or he is just overwhelmed, and they're just like, I don't know, she can't move, she's on the ground. And we can't work on or help the situation until we know a few general things, like what the patient's name is, age, allergies, what medicine she's on, and her history of, maybe she's diabetic and her blood sugar's, crazy or whatever. We have to know a few pieces of information, those things that I just mentioned. So what I love to see personally is if sometimes it takes maybe 30 seconds to get that information. Sometimes if they're rattled and they can't remember, or maybe they're not even around, maybe the person called 911 themselves, and they're just only semi-conscious, they're not with it. To help with those types of situations, have an index card in your pocket or for a loved one that says, your husband or wife's or anyone's date of birth, name, date of birth. I love it. It's so great when I go into these homes and they're a little rattled, and they just hand me a card saying here, and I'm like, thank you, this is great. And I take this, transcribe it into my notes. 10 seconds later, we're working on the patient, and everything's so much better. But when we're because medicines are hard to remember, histories of different illnesses are really hard to remember. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that brings up the Knox box and the red bag on the fridge.
Right.
The what was the second thing? The red.
The red thing we here in the village, we're given red plastic sleeves to put on the refrigerator that say medical information.
Okay.
And by the door, there's a sticker. I have a sticker by the door that says that I have it and where it is.
Yeah.
Is it called a vial or file of life, or is that ring a bell?
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
File of life.
Okay.
But it's bright red, and it's
On the fridge.
And it's got a magnet, so.
Okay, good, yeah, that's a relatively new program we started implementing not too long ago, less than 2 years ago, we brought it back. It used to be called several years ago, 20-some years ago, we had a program that expired over 20 years ago. It was called the Vial of Life, and it was
Pillbox.
it was a pillbox, gosh, and it was supposed to be kept in a,
In your refrigerator.
in a refrigerator, gosh,
I
yeah.
had it.
I've never.
I'm that old.
Yeah, so I've been a firefighter for 23 years, and I just heard about it. We've never. It was taken away prior to me working, but I had heard about it, and the reason why it was taken away is because people weren't updating their information like they should, and we found out that it's better for us not to have the information than to have the incorrect or wrong information. So that's kind of why that went away. But the concept is really good, and if we can keep it up and do it, and I think that's why we did some modifications, revisited it, and keep it in do this file of life now, which makes more sense. From what I understand, I was told it's a pill bottle, but it's got paper inside of it. It just seems weird to me that they're, I don't know. But the file of life makes a lot more sense to me. And yes, and us firefighters are familiar with, especially the guys in the field, they're familiar to look for those things, just like we're trained to look for medical alert tags for diabetes or anybody with a history. Yeah, DNRs, yes. And then the Knox box you asked about. So all buildings, including this building, and most schools, most grocery stores, have something that we call Knox boxes. And if you just notice, next time you go into any building, whether it's a grocery store or apartment complex, most of them have these things that we call Knox boxes. They're big black boxes about this big, usually near the main entrance, about roughly 6 foot high or something like that, 5 foot high, near the main entrance on the wall mounted. And this Knox box and it looks like a safe, it's heavy duty metal, and we have a special key in the fire engine. All fire engines and all ambulances have this special key, and it's literally kind of like the key to the city, because this key opens up all Knox boxes. And it's just not on a key ring. It's this key fits inside something that's mounted to the fire engine, and we just can't take out this key at free will. We have to call our dispatchers over the radio, and then they release the key on their computer system, and then we take it out. And that key fits into this Knox box, that big metal box, and it opens up. And that Knox box is nothing more than a heavy-duty safe mounted to a wall. Inside that Knox box, though, is it's mainly designed for keys, whether it's keys to all the main entrances to get into the building, or keys to individual units. That's the homeowners or the building management company's decision. They don't have to have a Knox box at all if they don't want, and if they do choose to have it, they can put whatever they want inside of it. I always like to encourage building management companies to think outside the box and don't just put keys in there. And if you do put keys in there, we're just kind of dumb firefighters. Label them for us, so we have an idea of this goes where and what goes where. And business cards of a person, a building manager, or someone that might be on duty 24 hours, where we can see, oh, okay, this person we're supposed to call in an event of emergency. If there's a sprinkler pipe that's busted, 2 o'clock in the morning, that sort of thing. Have a business card. A little layout, the blueprint to the building might be helpful. Where the alarm panel is located would be helpful, and sprinkler room. They can put all kind of stuff in there, and it's really helpful to us. And the main driving point, there's many benefits and advantages and reasons, but I'd say the main driving point is it prevents the fire department from, if there's a strong need to, waiting, that's the thing, there's 2 things. If we don't wait, then we,
breaking the door.
Breaking, yes, breaking. Because if we don't break down the door, then we're waiting. And if we think that there's a small chance that there is a fire, oftentimes we break down the door and stuff like that, and well, that's enough motivation for these businesses to get these Knox boxes.
So how do you spell this, K-N-O-X?
KNOX, yeah.
K-N-O-X?
Yep.
I live in a senior community, and there's 16 units in my building, and we have the Knox box. And all but 2 residents had put their key in there and, given it to the firefighters or whoever set it up. So we did have an emergency, and there was a suspicion of gas, although there's only 2 or 3 units in the building that have gas stoves. But anyway, what happened was the firefighters came, I think it was very early in the morning. Anyway, not everybody was awake. A lot of single people, probably 12 of the units have single people living in them. My point is, they had these keys and they could bang on doors, and if people didn't come, they could use a key to open. But the person who was not there, apparently was away, didn't, and that's where the gas was coming from.
Oh.
And so the door got broken.
Yeah.
And, in the condo, if you own the condo, it's your responsibility to put up the door, and it has to be just like the others. But it's also worked very positively in a medical situation where, again, a single person had I don't remember all the details of what her injury was, but it really was amazing. And because it was the middle of the night and other people weren't awake, etc. So if you live in a multi-dwelling, I really encourage you to investigate them.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
it's a
fire
very good
department
point.
will come and give you a little 10-minute talk in the lobby to tell you how it is.
Right. And if anything needs to be adjusted in the Knox box, whether it's a key that's deactivated, because a lot of things that are in the Knox boxes, they're not just physical metal keys, but they're key cards now and scanners and all that stuff. But if anything's deactivated, it needs to be reactivated. The only way you can get into that Knox box is by a fire department representative, whether it's on a fire engine or an ambulance, to come by with that key. The only other way is there's one guy in the fire marshal's office that that his main job is he has that special key that's mounted inside his vehicle, and it's not a fire engine or an ambulance, to go and assist with that as well. Yep.
So where can you acquire the Knox box?
Where
can you buy these boxes?
So if you just Google search Knox box, it comes up. It's a certain manufacturer. I don't know if I have the.
We had a meeting.
Who did, so?
It's recorded, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
She knows where to get it from.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So these, and those big black boxes that I was talking about are for the main entrance of apartment complexes, schools, and all these big commercial buildings or whatever, big black boxes. And now, and I think this is what you guys have started thinking about just recently, I'd say less than, it was, and no one knew about it, even firefighters like myself. I just learned about it a few short months ago because this just came out right before COVID, and then after COVID cleared up, no one even communicated that we had this new program. So these Knox boxes that I was telling you about, those big black boxes, now they came out with, just a couple short years ago, of a miniature white box. Exact same concept, except for it's just smaller in size. And what this Knox box is for, same concept, but it's not for just the main entrance it's not for the main entrance of the building, it's for your individual unit or home. Right, so you can have this, it's the exact same concept, it's the same key that we have in our ambulance that opens it up. And I thought that was, when I heard about that just a few short months ago, I was like, well, why doesn't everybody, all the firefighters, I don't know, that program, or someone didn't spread the word to that, and someone actually,
Yes, it's your office that you're supposed to call.
The-
To activate it.
the fire marshal's office, yes, they have the program, right. And see, well, and it's a little fuzzy and a little weird. My job, so I don't work for the fire marshal's office. When I got hired, when I took the vacancy in the fire marshal's office,
Oh, I see.
I had the same exact job that I do, and then they're just like, well, you can do a lot more presentations and community outreach, educating the community. So you don't mind if we're gonna put you over here with our outreach division. And I'm like, I don't care, like it's just a label, I don't care what you call me whatever you wanna call me. But the disadvantage to that, unfortunately, is now I'm not with the fire marshals, and I miss, and the fire marshals aren't putting the word out, and had I been in the fire marshal's office, I bet
You would have known.
probably, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Does the police have the same key?
No, but they call us right away.
Oh,
So they know that we have the key. So there's been many times where they might call us at 1 o'clock in the morning because they need to gain entry into a building or whatever. So so we get there and do it for the police.
But you gave us another route earlier in your talk about notifying you if we had an individual lockbox.
A code or something, yes. Mhm. It's just
But there is another route than having through the Knoxbox program.
Yes, that's kind of like similar alternative, because this Knoxbox program is sort of kind of brand new.
Yeah.
So prior to telling people that, the next best thing besides that is the combination.
Right.
So if you use your front door key and you got a key in there, you can use the fire department to get you the key.
It's a good
Are they
point.
very upset about that, or what is their response going to be to that? I mean, it's not the right thing to do, but.
I like it. I think that's a really good idea. I mean, yeah, you'd be surprised, every single firehouse, at least once a day, we get a non-emergency calls, whether it's,
Cat in the tree.
cat in a tree, exactly. And, you're not buying it with the intention of that, but that's a good driving force to incentive. Yes, so the local fire, I'm locked out, but I have a Knox box. That's good. I'd say that's definitely extremely doable. The fire department could come out and get that key for you.
Wouldn't do that, but.
It, actually, but now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, I'd say once a year or more, we get lockout calls, whether it's a child locked in a car or a child locked in a home, or just someone is just locked the keys out, and we try to think of and do non-destructive ways to get in to help the resident, whether it's a window or with using our ladders or whatever. So with that being said, you're actually making our job easier. So now instead of coming to your house using ladders to get in through a window, we can do it the easy way. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I spent $160 on a very hot day getting someone in to open my door.
Ah.
And they were ripping me off.
Yeah, and
But I wanted to get in my house.
I don't think the Knox box is too much more. I want to say it's a little over $200 for the Knox box itself. So
I was given a price of almost 400.
What's that?
I was given a price of almost 400.
Was it? I'd see.
Shocked.
Does that
I was
include?
shocked.
Yeah, check with Amazon, they're a lot less.
Oh, there was on Amazon.
But see, and my only concern with that is, I thought they had to be this approved Knox box
Yeah.
because we only have that special key.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Amazon.
No, this was a local dealer that was directed to.
Okay.
This bit, and I think in Colonium or somewhere, I remember exactly where. That's who I was directed to, and it was almost $400.
But he was gonna make 200 on
Mhm.
Oh.
it. Because that the
Yeah.
vendor or something.
Oh.
Probably. But just make sure whatever you get, make sure it's KNOX.
Right.
That's the main
But they
thing.
are available online for less?
Yeah, KNOX. And from what I understand from other residents, installation isn't, obviously it's a little bit of an arm and a leg for them to install that big black box outside. That takes, contractors to do. But that the little white box, it does the same thing. From what I understand, takes as much skill as pretty much hanging a picture on the wall. It's got like a little hook that goes over top the door, so you get it, and then it's doesn't take you don't have to hire somebody to mount it or anything like
My
that.
complex gave me permission.
What's that?
My complex gave me permission to do it. I'm in an apartment complex.
Good. Good. And like I said, think if you do choose to do that, think outside the box and put other things in that box besides a key, like medical, like cheat sheet, medical history of loved ones, date of birth, stuff that we can like, oh look, we got a key and we got her name, date of birth, and all that information. Oh, it looks like she has diabetes. Oh, that might be what the problem is. Let's look. So yeah, you can put other things in that box as well.
How easy is it to take the box off? Like you know, the thief's not picking up entire ATMs and taking off with them, right? And those are pretty much fortified, right? So this little white box, how easy is it to rip it off? And because it has a key to the house.
If it's only got 2 screws in it.
But see, the problem is that we're very light of the long driveway, and so no one can see what's going on in the front of my house. So leaving something there may not
Well,
be able
but
to.
that key is useless to anybody but the fire, but,
Sorry?
oh no, it would not have your individual key in it, wouldn't it? I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a lot of, like, after they steal it,
They'd have to.
like, it would take a lot of work for them to get inside of it because it's constructed like a safe. That's the whole thing that adds why it's so much money, the cost of it. It's not just like some sheet metal or plastic. It's so the person would have to have, first of all, they'd have to know what it is, and then they'd have to have a lot of motivation to just take it down is one thing, but then getting into it it's like, okay, they just stole a safe with money in it, but now they got to figure out how to get inside this heavy duty safe.
Right.
It's like anything else with security. I think if we look at security, even with this day and age in 2024, I feel like you could go to AT&T or any of the alarms and we could always think about, okay, I'm paying $100 a month for you guys to do this, but at the end of the day, someone can just throw a brick through the window and come in and be out. I feel like it's, at the end of the day, I always think, do due diligence, lock the doors before I go to bed, lock the doors and just do the basics. And if someone wants to get in anywhere bad enough, they're going to figure it out.
Okay, we need to be respectful of Tim's time, so any quick last minute questions? We're at noon. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
If, without regard to the Knox box and the bracelets, one place where firefighters look when they come into a home for medical information, where would you look? On the refrigerator, back of the front door? Where is there no common place?
There's not really a common go-to. Medical alerts, we're trained to look for that. The file of life, we're trained to look at that. And then if someone's unconscious and they're that bad off, laying on the ground, we wouldn't go on like a scavenger hunt trying to investigate. If they're that bad off where they can't talk to us, we're trying to kind of what we call load and go. We're like, oh wow, they can't communicate to us. Let's get him or her into the ambulance.
In a house, in a home. There's no common place where you would look.
The only time we would stop to look is if the patient, if we take his or her vital signs and they're within normal limits, and they're a little fuzzy, maybe they just passed out and they're coming back around, and we can see it's not like a priority one, and we have time to think about the situation and look on the refrigerator and look. So there is times where we try to investigate a little bit and figure out what the problem is and look around. Unfortunately, like the refrigerator, if we see something staring at us if the patient's right here, and we see something really obvious on the refrigerator, I'd say 75% chance we're going to see that. But it's not. If it's a true emergency and they're completely unconscious, we probably aren't going to see them. We aren't going to look for it either because we're trying to get that patient into our ambulance as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you very much.